Since the 1940s, New Zealand has had 6 National Party governments. Each of these governments left their mark on New Zealand. Each of these governments left a filthy stain on the country. The first national government came to power in 1949. Sidney Holland was the Prime Minister. The National Party claimed to value individual rights. But that didn't stop them from implementing some of the most tyrannical measures in New Zealand's political history. In 1951, the infamous waterfront dispute unfolded. In response to a major trade union strike, the government introduced extremely authoritarian measures. The government made it illegal for the press to support the strike. The government made it illegal to give food to striking workers. The government crushed freedom of speech and freedom of the press. The government stomped on people's civil liberties and individual rights. If you think Jacinda Ardern was New Zealand's most tyrannical leader, you don't know enough about Sidney Holland and the history of the National Party. This provides an early example of the National Party lacking integrity. The National Party claimed to be a defender of individual rights. But hostility towards trade unions took priority over any principle. In 1960, the second national government came to power. The second national government decided that New Zealand would make a good stooge for the USA. The second national government decided to get involved in the Vietnam War. The second national government decided that it was a good idea to send New Zealanders to participate in an immoral and pointless war. New Zealand's participation in that war will always be a stain on our historical record. The Vietnam War was a pointless bloodbath, and Keith Holyoake thought that participating in it was a good idea. Christopher Luxon, the current National Party Prime Minister, considers Holyoake to be a great Prime Minister. I don't know what is great about being a mindless henchman of the USA and a servant of its immoral foreign policy agenda. In 1975, the third national government came to power. Led by Robert Muldoon, this government would go down in history as a total disaster. The failures of the Muldoon government are so numerous as to be impressive. Robert Muldoon did enormous damage to the New Zealand economy. Extensive borrowing and heavy-handed economic management ensured that the economy was a total mess once Muldoon was finished with it. Muldoon pursued a racist immigration policy. The infamous Dawn raids disproportionately targeted Pacifica overstayers to a significant degree. Robert Muldoon exploited and encouraged division. Muldoon permitted the 1981 Springbok tour and enjoyed creating and exploiting enormous political division. Muldoon caused an enormous amount of unnecessary division. Muldoon repeatedly caused constitutional crises due to his total disregard for the rules of the political system. Muldoon caused a constitutional crisis at the start of his time as Prime Minister when he made an illegal attempt to abolish the previous Labour government's superannuation policy. Muldoon caused another constitutional crisis at the end of his time in government in the immediate aftermath of the 1984 election when he refused to obey the command of the incoming Labour government. Muldoon regularly attempted to act dictatorially, exercising total control over the government and the country. Muldoon was such a bad Prime Minister that I cannot name all of his failures here. They are virtually countless. In 1990, the fourth national government came to power. Led by Jim Bolger, the fourth national government pursued a brutal neoliberal agenda. With the Employment Contracts Act, the government crippled the trade union movement. To this day, trade unions have not recovered from the Employment Contracts Act. The act left workers powerless and at the mercy of their employers. Ruth Richardson, a deranged neoliberal, served as Bolger's Minister of Finance for the first 3 years of his government. Richardson engaged in brutal benefit cuts. The government moved towards user pays and displayed a total disregard for low-income and unemployed people. In 2008, the Fifth National Government came to power. The Fifth National Government attacked trade unions and workers' rights in an attempt to please foreign corporations. This was embodied in the infamous Hobbit Law. The government increased GST to ensure that ordinary people would increasingly be plagued by a gigantic flat tax every time they dare to open their wallet. And now National has been elected again. The current National government has delivered enormous tax cuts for landlords. And how are such tax cuts to be funded? Taking school lunches away from children. Refusing to give police the pay that they deserve. Cutting the welfare benefits of the sick and the disabled. Cutting funding for valuable public services. All while Luxon indulged in taxpayer-funded entitlements right up until the moment that he was exposed. The National government scrapped the Fair Pay Agreements legislation introduced by the previous Labour government. The Fair Pay Agreements legislation was intended to empower trade unions and working people. The National Party is funded by big money and serves big money. The current National government has done many other hideous things and will undoubtedly do many more. The National Party is a party with a grotesque political history. We must bring that grotesque political history to an end. The National Party is not your friend. The National Party has consistently opposed the interests of working people. The National Party has repeatedly done great damage to this country. New Zealand can do better. New Zealand deserves better.